This is going to talk a little bit about Hermes and what I think about when it comes to Hermes in the God Con. When I asked Hermes what the meaning of life was, he said that the meaning of mortal life is to escape into a dream and be caught between thoughts. When one is about to end and the next thought is about to begin, so that the feeling of the first thought would go on and last forever. One can feel that they've escaped forever. He told me the story of the universe. I'm going to start about the beginning of time. That there was the order and chaos. Apparently Eris, who is a daughter of Zeus, sister of Ares, that she was much like Eros or Aphrodite, born before they were born, existing before they were born. And she was destroying, that she was causing disorder. That there would be something created and then Eris would destroy it. And Hermes was tasked with creating some way to stop this. Zeus is the god of order, so maybe it was Zeus who was putting things down and Eris was scrambling them. And thus Hermes came up with the idea of creating a table of order and chaos, that Eris would be on one side and I assume Zeus on the other, Deus. And when Zeus would lay down, would be given the ability to lay down, was able to buy enough time for Zeus to lay down several blocks, and then when they reached Eris, Eris would destroy them, and it created a conveyor belt. And this is what began the flow of time. And he spoke of something where there was a liquid, a primordial bubbling, primordial energy that was bubbling. But there was no space around it, so bubbles could not form, but it was at a state where it could. And Hermes had to create extra space around it so that the bubbles could form. When the bubbles did form, the formation of the bubbles drew energy, and it cooled the rest of the material, just the shape of the bubble to form that. And with the withdrawal of energy required to create the shapes that were being impeded from being created by the lack of space. There was... he told me this when I asked him, why did you leave the crib? Why did you steal the cows? And he was telling me that it had something to do with this, and that he then became aware of some kind of special space, that extra-dimensional space, and he had to leave to do something with a sphere, I forget, and then it led to him eating cows. And that the way matter entered another dimension was by forming a shape that could withdraw enough energy that then the liquid could respond to, as if perhaps, when I think of this, I think of the liquid being our world and the extra space being alternate spatial, like the fourth dimension. And even though the liquid does not, the bubbles, because the bubbles form, the bubbles can only form because of this space, and it's our way, the third eye, the way to be aware of this space or other things, something. And these bubbles change the energy in the liquid, and we're in the liquid. So that's this alternation because of the shapes at the edge of reality can be detected to do certain things. He told me this, I forget in reference to what. And now I'm going to talk about, I think I've spoken about this before, I'll say it again, cosmic existential dendritiphilononic pylonics. Let's say you have a tree, and you have a seed energy, and it repeats the same fundamental things over and over again with small changes that gradually branch outward into everything else. Different branches. The more seed energy at the beginning, the better dendritophylenonic pylonic thing you can get. So dendritophylenonic pylonic universe is not very good in and of itself. That there was not enough energy, heat being motion, let's say, that there wasn't enough motion to create the kinds of shapes, the possibilities of motion to create the kinds of shapes, or by some other means, of the kinds of complex structures that would have assisted existence in this world to be something better. It was 1.25 GeV in spite for Kronos' radiarthistiphilianon, which is the infinite power universe. So Deus said, limits, there are going to be limits here. It's going to be the same stuff repeating over and over again. And these branches expand as if, but because we didn't have enough seed energy to make things, enough complexity at the beginning, or enough help from the cosmos or the gods, and low energy, it's not even a very good, or not the best dendritophylenonic pylonic universe, which means there are lots of things missing that could have helped things be better, but this is what you have. And thus this reality is full of problems that, as a consequence, things that are missing. Now, as these branches expand, it's as if the seed energy is going up the trunk and into these branches, and they form like a tube. The energy goes out the ends of the tube, and as matter flows within it and throughout it, they collect at the ends of each of the tubes, and they expand, and the structure allows the continued expansion. As the tree grows, the energy dissipates, and once the energy gets low enough, or there's a very small branch, a scion, as Hermes called it, that has lower energy beneath the threshold to continue the primordial expansion, it starts to stop accumulating. As complexity accumulates, it is also destroyed. As we said, Eris is destroying, causing disorder. And once the energy is low enough, it cannot outpace destruction, and it begins to stop. And once it stops, the shape of the expansion required a specific shape, and that gets disrupted. There has to be a next step to continue. When there's not a next step, it's as if everything becomes dependent on the next step. It puts its whole essence into continuing, and when it can't do that, the whole thing changes. It collapses inward. And like a snow globe, it starts to settle and forms complexities of a different kind. And when those things are low, in a low energy, very tiny scion, a branch stagnated and began to collapse in on itself and became the basis of our entire type of being, mortal creatures. And when there's no longer enough energy or material to expand, the energy in the tube becomes, the tube starts to collapse and change. The tube starts to flutter, then the energy in the branch gets slower, and then the difference between the energy in the branch and the energy in the trunk of the tree becomes different, and the inertia of the slower energy forces out the faster energy. And then now there's less energy entering the tube, then that reinforces it, and it continues like that and then the stagnation becomes more and more and more, collapses more and more, settles more and more. Now, mortal beings. I think of the sensu bean, if I've not mentioned this before, the spirit splint, that this stagnation means that you cannot put more energy in. The sensu bean puts more energy in, and part of that is to continue the expansion. And when this tube, to become us, it had to lose energy and settle, collapse. And part of that collapsing is that you lose the shape of continuing the expansion. When you add more energy, it begins to then restore that shape and move everything back into the alignment that caused to recreate itself more. Which can accelerate, which holds like a splint, a spirit splint that holds everything in the position where that helps things to accumulate complexity that we feel strong from, that helps our sense of strength and health. And a lot of, let's say, our injuries can come from that, not the damage itself. However, incidentally, when you do that, you have things in good form, it then helps the healing. So if it's perfect, like with the sensu bean, or very, very good, you get like super glue level healing, where if it's like nigh instantaneous, and if not complete healing, you get a lot of healing. So even if it didn't do that, it acts like a splint. The energy holds everything in the place where it was low energy. That's why it collapsed into a mortal creature. And so we permanently have this lack of health that we don't feel because it's we don't know or pay attention to. I mean, I'm sure we've noticed that our bodies and life sucks, but we don't pay attention to it because it's constant. If the energy were to continue, I assume the sensu being does not try to do what I assume Saiyans do on a regular basis. They dendritiphilianize themselves. That's why they're screaming. They're destroying themselves. They're placing so much energy. They're breaking down the structures that make them what they are, so that they continue, so that they can return enough to the primordial state and like reborn themselves, to continue gestating or to continue the primordial expansion of their complexity, so that they can reach new heights of existence, new abilities, but of course they couldn't realistically do that without destroying themselves. But in the fantasy, this is also like a dream I had, but say it were real in the fantasy, you wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, you can do that in the fantasy. And when you have energy like that that's continuing the expansion, that would destroy you. It would burn you up. So I assume that, let's say this, when I think of the sensu being, I'm thinking of just enough energy to begin that process of making the small parts accelerate again, and getting them going faster accelerates every part of your activity, including healing and your energy, your vitality. That you get into a car wreck, you can go into shock, feel shock. Hermes told me of this time where Phobos mutilated him, but he was able to get his nervous system into shock, and Phobos didn't know and left. He thought he'd tortured him into submission, and then he disguised himself as an old Jewish man and went to a horse racing track. And it sounds like Wonder Shows, and he was just there. And he felt he got away with not experiencing pain, and he was content with that. That is something of the abyss, where something really bad happens and it like causes a part of you to die or to go away or to not work, and because of that you become happy with things you normally don't, maybe things that are dangerous, and typically things that come from a lower state of complexity, like being happy without doing anything, or liking to kill people, or whatever it is, things that are dangerous, and ordinarily you have something that makes you not be able to enjoy that. But now some idea that permits these things, fetishes. Maybe you can become Batman because when you find these parts of life that you didn't know existed under circumstances, they can cause you to release parts of yourself. The permanent apotheosis, where someone becomes able to just do anything, and the hero can do anything for a short time by great exertion. They just become capable of solving any problem for a short time. And Batman is like in apotheosis all the time. That's what he is. When someone can feel like, even if they know, if they can just disable the part of Batman, the part of Bruce Wayne that allowed him to become Batman that had to die, was he lost faith in humanity. He had to be able to feel that something was that there was some meaning to existence, that something in his reality was supporting him, again, where he lost that feeling when his parents had died. And when the bat showed up, he could then believe. He was just in the right state of mind that then he could feel it. He knows reality, but he can feel. He feels like something, that reality will support him, and the body will only sever its self-preservation to release its full power. That's dangerous. That would kill us if we used it all the time. No one would be left alive. But that the body will feel that Bruce Wayne's need for vengeance is a worthy reason to sever itself from self-preservation in mind and body, allowing commitment, psychological commitment, and of his extremities to attain the persona of the Batman. Though only if the reality around him was more psychomagnetic, meaning more like a mind or able to act in the ways that very much we know it doesn't. And to have meaning is like to live a fantasy. It's not real. And I think of that, a fantasy seems less worthwhile if we know it's a fantasy. We have to think it's, or at least feel like it's real. And it's nostalgia, the fondness of something, of time you've lost. For those who have peaked, things will only get worse after this point, so we value the past just because it is the past. Maybe what we were doing wasn't that great, but something we were something better then. Or we had something we're only losing from this point out. If I could go back now. And then also we want what we do not have. This went trick-or-treating. I made a video about the candy, and in one of the fortune cookies, I found that you only treasure what you cannot possess. Interesting. It's pertinent here. I'm going to place it there. That may be part of why we value this nostalgia. A memory is not a fantasy. I mean, it's not real anymore. It's gone. It's something that's that is no longer existing. But it has this feeling of reality, and it allows us to feel that we could go there and escape. Or not that we can go there, but it gives us a feeling of escape, that because it's not the same as a fantasy or a dream. It has the presence, the feeling of now, because we feel it is somehow like the present. It's a point in time, even though it's really just a memory. It's gone, but we feel like it's a place, like it's solid as reality, and we exploit that to feel that it's not a fantasy. And if we can think it's not a fantasy, if we can think it's real, we can value it. Maybe we value reality. We feel discontent remaining in a dream for long periods because we are vulnerable. We have to wake up eventually. Apollo once said that life is like a dream, that it is a dream that keeps the heart and mind alive, and you are doomed, from which it is a dream that keeps the heart and mind alive, from which you are doomed to wake, and when it goes, you too shall die. I had a lucid dream with Apollo in it, and Dionysus was there. The rosy, kind of reddish eyes, people who have been near death, as if the deoxygenated, battered heart broken pieces. And that force that pushes everything into alignment and makes the shape where everything falls into position. It's like when something breaks, it forces the wreckage into a specific location. Maybe when you have a broken heart, the wreckage goes to your eyes. Think of Tove Lo from that XOXO Bitches video. She has that reddish kind of material around her eyes. It makes me think of that. The broken heart from a brush with death. The physicality of one who is seen into the abyss, and into whom the abyss has seen. What is she? Is she broadcasting a part of her is dead? I think she said in the fairy dust video, or one of them, I think it was fairy dust, that no more fear. That's from the abyss, that pain is a path to more pleasure. Imaginary friends stay with you to the end. That's different. The sacrifice it takes to that only something of you could stay with you to the end because you're not good enough. But stay with you to the end. The sacrifice one would make to stay with someone to the end. No one would make it, but you, your own imagination. I was talking. What is it? Fairy dust. The pain is a path to more pleasure. No more fear. The fear dies. Something is gone. That's of the abyss. That something, due to some horrible thing, has like faded away or become less important because the extreme experience has made something else go down. This goes high, and then you don't feel that anymore. And when you don't feel that, then things that depended on that no longer are important. And like you say, Tove Lo is saying, well, because of this horrible pain, now I don't feel fear, and without the fear, I can enjoy this thing now. So there's like some things, sometimes you get like these strange things that come out of bad things. The red lining around the eyes of the cloud, Queen of the Clouds, the cloud. And one of the bad things about a dendritophyllonic pylonic paradigm of existence in a 1.25 GeV universe is that it's like a puzzle that cannot completely solve, that can't solve itself, or not completely. So there's always stuff that cannot manipulate itself because there's nothing to do that. Only some parts have the ability to do that. So there are these unsolved parts that need a more complex structure to solve it, or give it real estate, places to move into where it's still able to shift around further and do things that help the life, not just fall out and be nothing. And one of the things that we don't have as a result there, it's not a psychomagnetic universe, which means there are things like the mind that it cannot do. I think a lot of meaning is just that we want life to be more like our creations, that we make to do a specific thing. And generally things that are artificial are valuable or interesting because that's why they're made. We value them. And so we want life to be like a creation, but scaled up. We cannot create things that are that great. We need the force of nature to create, combined with the qualities that make something artificial that nature doesn't produce, and we can't get that. As if only there was some like a creation you could. All right, so artificial. So meaning is like artificial things, but magnified. We want the artificial property magnified to the scale of nature, so we can be rewarded enough to finally feel comfortable. We feel that something is missing from our lives, and if we could fix it before we die, we could obtain that thing, we could feel satisfied, it would be over. Like, again, the things we do, there's something it does, and then it finishes. We're content with it. We don't need it anymore, or well, at least not for a time. And we want that. We need something to make it comfortably end. That, let's say, methamphetamine will be, if you took that or some drug, it could be one of the most incredible experiences in life. But the result of doing so later, after it does that, the feelings, the horror that can precede it is so bad that you might as well not. And I think people think that if only it were like an experience, not just a chemical, a feeling, but if like you see with an invention, you don't just make something complicated and then the thing just appears. It's physically congruous with what you made. It's you can see how one thing leads to the other and how they're physically similar, how one thing makes and forms, creates, transforms into the next thing. That's why you say like a point. You can follow the edge to see where it ends, how it changes slightly, how one thing is like the other, similar to the other, until eventually you reach the end of the point of the spear. And we want the same kind of ability to understand. We want a similar feeling from life itself. We want to be able to see how everything is like. We want some experience that allows us to be like the way that the universe works, thinking that having the same understanding of something we've made of the universe, that the experience of understanding it will be itself this incredible pleasure, and that it being structured like reality in the way that and something we make is structured like the thing it creates, the reward that comes from the invention, the reward that then comes from the universe, if it has meaning, will be congruous with reality. And just it being, that feeling being structured that way, will change the experience from something like meth to crystal meth to something like meaning, into meaning. It will give it a safe way to end. It's as if, like, once again, that Republican power, it can only happen, it can only work that way. It can only happen this way. And anything outside that, you can have some problem, because there's no way it can operate outside that. One of those problems with a dendritic-to-philononic pylonic universe, it only works a specific kind of way. There's no, if I turn you upside down, you start to fall apart. Things are not stable. They're not good in every situation. They're fragile, because not on purpose, because there's not enough energy to form all the things to make everything work perfectly and well and in every situation. So anything beyond the one way that life can work, it will fall apart or start to go wrong. But if there was meaning, life would be sure to support us, and to continually, like our inventions, you can trust that there is something interesting in everything, and something valuable, and not just good, but satisfying, that makes it worthwhile. The universe does not work like that, obviously. You can search all you want. All you'll find is more like math homework. It's not anything that great or profound. But if the reward in life was not only, if there was something substantial, like I often think of drugs, because I feel like, like, it makes you feel like there is meaning in the universe, that this is your purpose, to do drugs, that this is what's going to satisfy you, and that nature did make some way to satisfy you in its drugs. But of course, you will get addicted, so I don't do them. But that's kind of unfortunate. I feel like that's what we all want. We just want to feel good and then die on a high note. But once again, life did not give us that, and it didn't give a reality that yields some kind of special reward with a special feeling that's like the way that the universe works, enough that we can see how the two are related, how one led to the other, and how things are, that just from the experience of it, is structured in a way, this feeling that it lets you figure out how everything is related, how one thing becomes this, now this becomes that, and that this would be one of the most